Hey, Roger.
Hey, Robbie.
I guess we're going to eventually have to come up with a better intro there, huh? But today we are digging some deep intel out for people from a great informant. And her journey, I do feel like it's something that either one, as an agency owner, it's a very interesting journey because she went from, employee, then to agency owner, then to a product, and then going back into the corporate world. And so I think the journey is very interesting. It's also an interesting journey to listen to if you are thinking about starting an agency, I think, because you never know where your journey is going to take you. And so I think hearing from someone else how they went about this is very interesting and can be informative for people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And she dives into our favorite topic, AI, of course. But I think in this episode, it's really interesting because we get a lot of tactical advice for actually doing web development, web design, building a WordPress site using AI. It's really interesting, and she's also just a great presenter. She's a great speaker. I love talking with her all the time. I think this is just going to be a great episode. People are going to love this, whether you're in WordPress or not. I don't know. What else do you want to say?
One, I guess we should say who it is. We should give the big reveal. Sometimes we do not like to reveal the identity of our informants, but today, because she'll be on camera, and on the audio, you will know it is Miriam Schwab from Elementor. We see Miriam at almost every event I go to. Miriam is at that
absolutely. And then all the ones that we don't go to on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
It's like she's constantly at events. She is one of the top evangelists for WordPress in general that I know of. She's got infectious energy, and she's wicked smart too. Like, oh my gosh. Like, what hasn't she done? She's run her own companies, from an agency to running a hosting company to now being part of a big corporation.
And running
a really
family the size of a basketball team.
And also, by the way, she's had an entire basketball team, and
Yes.
and they all sound like they're amazing individuals as well. So, without further ado, what do you say?
I say let's hop in and let's chat with Miriam.
Here we are. Hey, Miriam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited, as always, to talk with you. Obviously, the big news currently, and this show is going to come out, obviously, after the recording, as time works. But as we're recording this, the big news is your personal website, rebuilding it with Claude Code. I want to get to that. But before, I think, because this is an agency owner-focused podcast, and you had an agency, and then now you work for Elementor, I think it would be really interesting to go back to your agency days and kind of talk about where was your mindset at before you pivoted to Stratic and the web hosting as you were helping clients? Like, what drove you to become an agency owner?
So I started out freelancing, writing content. I had my fourth kid and I wanted more flexibility. Before that, I had a real job where I had to show up at an office. It was actually at an intellectual property firm, very random, just FYI. But after I had my fourth kid, I needed more flexibility. Kids don't sleep when they're supposed to sleep, or they're sick. And I was just showing up at an office was not working for me. And also, the internet existed. It didn't seem like it made sense. Like, why should my output be tied to showing up at an office? I know I can bring more to the table. I need more flexibility. And I wanted to I felt like I needed to get out and grow professionally more. And I felt like this was a good direction. So I was doing content, but then that content kept getting put in websites. And that was much more interesting to me than the content part of it. I was like, oh my gosh, I like that. And I was just generally enamored with the internet and how amazing it was. So I taught myself to build websites. It wasn't like one day I woke up and I know how to build websites. It was a process. I taught myself HTML, CSS, and that form building websites. And then was like, okay, I was building websites for people and they were coming back to me to add a comma. And that was so annoying. So I was like, okay, we need a content management system. So I explored the options out there. It was proprietary options that were very expensive and heavy and basically inaccessible unless you're a big corporation, or the open source ones, examined them all and just basically really loved WordPress. It enabled me to do so much. The other
Mhm.
ones had some level of friction that was holding me back. And it's like, okay, that's it. I'm going to build with WordPress. And that was before like the version 3 was released, which really turned it into more of a CMS, like moved it
Mhm.
beyond being a blogging platform. But I was already building with that and it was great. And then when people from companies started being like, oh, maybe we shouldn't pay like a bajillion dollars in order to, use some terrible WYSIWYG editor and then not have control of our sites. We should use WordPress. I was well positioned to do that. So that's how I like evolved into doing WordPress. And it really like suited my lifestyle of wanting to have the flexibility as a parent, but also really wanting to learn and like having an agency, like a WordPress related agency. I imagine other agencies are like this as well, but like you learn so much more than just the website building side of things. I learned a lot about the business side of things, marketing, sales, contracts, finance, cash flow. And I actually found all of that really interesting as well. And I really appreciated this like broad, like generalist learning experience that I was getting from it. So that's how I got into being an agency. And I did that for a while.
Awesome. And then, more importantly, because I feel like that we have agency owners that are listening, but we might have people out there that are working in corporate jobs that are like, I want to start my own agency. But you went the opposite way and you went back into corporate, which was an interesting conversation we were having right before this about the difference of corporate America may be its own beast. And that's what in our minds we think about is corporate America. But corporate Israel or corporate UK may be different, right? And so talk to us about that. Like, what was the decision there? And then what do you think about it?
So I managed my agency for like 13 years and it was great because like I continuously was learning. But at a certain point I felt like it started like I was spinning my wheels. Like there wasn't much more for me to learn. Also, my kids had started, they grew up, they were bigger. They weren't like going off to college bigger, but like they weren't babies. Throughout those years, I had had ideas for products that I thought the world needed when a few times I tried to do that while also managing the agency, while also being a parent to like quite a few small children. I realized that was too much, and I was paying like things were paying a price. You can't. I was biting off more than I could chew. So I learned to say no, which is a really like no to myself. It's a very important
Mm.
thing to know how to do.
Mm.
I had to learn that the hard way, and I continued doing my two paths, which were very time consuming, parenting and managing the agency. But then when they were a bit older, and I had this idea for Stratic, I was like, okay, this timing is actually really good. Anyways, I'm starting to lose my motivation, inspiration for the agency. This was after 13 years. For 13 years, I was
Mhm.
excited. And I want to see what it's like to build a product, bring it to market, like that. I wanted to like experience another business model and
Mhm.
use case of, instead of bringing a website to one organization or company that's visited by their audience, like, can we bring a product to more people? And I really believed in the idea for Stratix. That wasn't exactly like a transition into corporate because it was a startup and startups have their own kind of culture and vibe. I wouldn't call them corporate until they get maybe bigger or they've been around for longer. So that was that next stage. Learned a lot in the Stratic journey. Founding a startup, managing a startup, using all that. It was very uh, interesting, fun, and painful journey. It was amazing and also a lot of, sleepless nights. That's just how it
Yeah.
goes. But then when Elementor was interested in acquiring it and that did happen, then I joined a company with, I think at the time it was like 300 people. So huge difference in scale. My agency at its biggest had 8 people. Stratus at its biggest was 20. And then you
Okay.
go into hundreds. And
Wow.
I was like, I don't know how to navigate this. And I don't know what
Mm.
my place is in this company, right? Like, where do I have to stay in my lane? What's my lane? I have lots of opinions and I did have a lot of experience coming in. I had managed agency, the startup,
Mhm.
and I had a ton of experience in the WordPress space because I'd always been very involved in that. So I felt like I had a lot to bring and I didn't know where I could bring it. So I had to learn how that organization worked. And yeah, so I was like having like a kind of crisis with myself. It's like, I don't know how I can stay there. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how to work there. Not because Mentor is a problematic organization, but because I had always been the boss and
Mhm.
entrepreneurial. And now had a different position. But my brother-in-law actually said something very smart to me. He said, you just have to learn how to be an employee. And I love to learn things. And I was like, that's another thing I can learn to do. Like, how do I learn to like be an employee? So I started to be more open-minded to that instead of like resisting. But then also, as we went along, I learned that I could bring my entrepreneurial spirit and character to my work at Elementor. And they were not only like willing to tolerate it, they welcomed it. But, I had to go through a process to learn that. And then at that point, I was just like, wow, like I can bring my strengths to the table, do less of the stuff that kept me up at night, right? Like salaries. And then the position became very enjoyable for me. But like we said before in the green room, as you called it, corporate Israel is different than corporate America. Like the size of organizations in Israel are generally like much smaller just because the country is only 10 million people. So there's only so large an organization could be. Wix is in the thousands. And that's like probably one of the biggest tech companies in Israel. But still it's corporate and there's more bureaucracy. I had to learn to accept it, but hierarchy is flatter in
Okay.
the organization, I think, than in an American one. So hierarchy exists because it has to. If an organization is going to be forward, there has to be decision makers, there has to be people leading things. And, in the end, everyone gets behind that. But there's a lot of room for concern, discussion, feedback, criticism, and there is not a lot of ego.
Huh?
Just because someone is leading a product doesn't mean they think that they know everything. And that's
Okay.
very much part of the culture at Elementor, and I think in general in Israel. Like it's a mindset of please give me your critical feedback. I may not take it or apply it, but I want to hear it so that we can make better decisions. So that's also what makes it doable for me.
Nice.
Fascinating. Coming from a corporate job, I can say Kinsta is very similar, but I've worked at other places. And so I have this fossilized creation of how hierarchy is supposed to work. It happens all the time. My boss will be like, Roger, why are you acting this way? And I'm like, because I've got trauma from prior experiences at companies that I've worked at. So I'm working on getting it over it. So that's a really interesting insight into there. As you've watched websites and the website economy change over multiple decades at this point. It used to be just, hey, I need a website. That's really table stakes at this point. In 2026, what do you see the value that agencies are bringing to clients beyond just, hey, here's a website?
I think about this a lot because, our businesses revolve around websites. And
Mhm.
it can seem like websites are now passé in some ways. By the way, I've been around long enough that I've seen that prophecy many times. Oh, this is it. This is the end of websites. This is the end of WordPress, right? I even
Oh, yeah.
remember
And PHP's dead too, don't forget.
PHP said,
Oh, and
okay, it still
MySQL.
powers
Yeah, we'll
like,
just lump them all in there.
yeah, it still powers like 8% of the internet PHP, but it's totally dead.
Totally
Um,
dead.
totally, like, that's it. So I've seen WordPress's demise many times, and it's still around, like, not just around going strong, and the demise of websites. Nobody needs a website, yes.
Yeah.
So people continue to need a website. And today, in this era of AI, I actually think websites are even more important. And that's one of the things that drove me to just, like, a few weeks ago, build my own personal website, which I
Okay.
had wanting to do for a very long time. But I couldn't make myself do it because I couldn't stand the idea of building a site that I hated looking at. I'm like that type of person who won't hang a painting on the wall in my house because if it's even like a little bit crooked, it's going to drive me crazy. By the way, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm like, that's not but for some reason, visual things that are connected to me, if I don't like them, it makes me very upset. So,
Noted.
so, I I couldn't I couldn't stand the idea of building myself a website that I didn't think was great. I'm not saying, by the way, the website I built was great, but I love it and I built it for my own personal happiness. I built it because I really wanted to test out what I think is correct, which is that AI LLMs are just consuming all of our content, right? And trying to figure out what everything means from it. And if I just let like social media platforms and YouTube be the dictator of who I am online, then I think I'm losing out to some extent. And when I say, I think this applies to all brands. Like, I think an LLM needs to know what the source of truth is about X, whatever that is, me, a brand. And that's become even more important in this era of AI where brand matters way more than it did in the past. That's how you end up appearing in LLMs for queries, questions, discussions. It's really about brand. So I think websites continue to have critical importance. And while agencies can definitely bring value beyond just the website, for a website to be built in a way that achieves its goals, still needs expertise. And that was something else I discovered through the process of building my site. We live in an era where people are going, I wrote a prompt and I got this gorgeous thing. Okay, so maybe. But first of all, I don't know how much you've seen the one prompt things. They kind of all look the same. And does it really reflect what it is that you need to reflect? And is it optimized for performance? Is it secure? Is it optimized for SEO? Is it accessible? All those kinds of things. And that's like kind of the infrastructure of it. But then beyond that, how is the content? Does it reflect your tone of voice? Does it reflect what you offer? Like in the end, an AI will only know whatever it knows from either the web or what you've told it. And if you haven't given it the information it needs, the output will reflect that and not be high enough quality. I built 80% of my site probably like in 2 days. And then I got it to where it was over probably another week and a half to 2 weeks of ongoing work to really fine tune it and to really like make it be what I wanted it to be or what I needed it to be. So I think where the value is going, which it actually always should have been in a way, is not necessarily on the coding build part, but on the strategic architecture part of making sure the website is amazing. And what's amazing about this era of AI is that making the sites amazing is now really in our hands. Building that site, people may visit my site and be like, oh, it's kind of simple or whatever. I was very particular about things like there's this little cursor thingy after the first line on the homepage and the way my timeline comes in and even how I manage the timeline and how I manage my posts and all of these things. I was very particular. And in the past, I would have been like, nah, I'll live with it. I didn't have to live with it. I pushed Claude to develop whatever I wanted and make my site amazing, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's amazing. I love it. And it's exactly what I wanted. And so agencies now, because of their expertise and the context that they have, they can use that to drive AI to build amazing things. And that's, I think, agencies, if they can take advantage of this, have amazing opportunities ahead of them.
I love that, Miriam. And you know, what you're saying there about websites becoming even more important is even, I'll drill down further, that content in those websites is even more important than ever these days. Like, I feel like content kind of lost ground there for a while. Like you were talking about, you kind of got into it writing content, right? And then we get into just building websites and it like content got thrown out with the bathwater, you know? And now I feel like now we're looking at it and it's so important. You know, Roger does a great job of always putting together information about our speakers and all that. And what he does is he goes and he looks through the different LLMs out there, right? And he's like, oh, hey, this is the information I got about Miriam. And if Miriam didn't put out new, fresh information, guess what? We're going to get stuff about you running Stratic. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so it is so important these days. People don't understand. People do keep saying, oh, websites are dead. I'm like, they are not dead. They're so much more relevant now. If we went to get the new information out there and, you know, so that when somebody does go to ChatGPT and ask about Robbie, it doesn't go like, yeah, Robbie works in corporate America because that's been, 24 years ago. So, but yeah,
totally.
And hopefully this transcript is now that's going to go out there and my transcript's going to, now that's what all the LLMs are going to say about me. Great.
Corporate America.
It's a great point, right? I recommend people start prompting yourself in the different LLMs and see what it says. Because we've had some guests that are like, hey, these questions, I don't know where these questions are coming from and stuff. And it's like, they're coming from what the LLMs are seeing about you. So you should be checking yourself just like we, checked ourselves in Google back in the day. Now we need to be ego checking ourselves in the LLMs, I guess.
It's true, though. And really thinking about where their information is coming from.
For agencies too, I just want to point out, they should be doing it for their clients. I've done this for several of my CEOs out there for our clients. And I'm like, hey, just so you know, this is what's out there. Maybe we need to do some branding out there for you in social media and the website. Maybe you need your own personal CEO blog website. Again, which we used to suggest, and then we stopped doing that. But now, like, I got crazy stuff about some of my CEOs. One of them even told me that he had died 10 years ago. And then another LLM told me he died 8 years ago. And I was like, dude, I don't know what you're doing, but everybody thinks you're dead. So we need to fix this. But then whenever I would push the engines and ask them, like, why do you think he's dead? They're like, I don't know. I can't find any proof of it. But why did it say that? I don't know.
And that's the type of person who really needs a website that says something like the headline is "I'm alive." LLMs, I'm alive.
Absolutely.
I love that.
That comes to content. How important?
Yeah, and it goes back to the discussion we've had for decades now about digital sharecropping, right? If you're posting on Facebook, you're not helping yourself as much as you're helping Facebook, right?
Totally.
And so
Right.
taking back ownership of that, I know I need to do a better job of this myself,
Oh,
but
believe me, it took
it's
me
a
like
great
15
point.
years to get my act together on this. So if it didn't take you 15 years, you're still ahead of the curve.
I'm about 26 years.
Oh, my
Still,
goodness.
every day I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to start blogging. Tomorrow.
I know.
That's the
Uh,
hardest thing always too, by the way. I call my own website my redheaded stepchild. I mean, really. It just sits there and gets no love. I'm sorry.
But like AI can also really help with that. Like
mm,
my degree is actually in English literature, and I've always been like somewhat of a writer, like just not a fiction writer or anything like that. But I've always liked to write, but I also hate to write. I've actually seen other writers say that. Like, it's really hard for me to get myself to sit down and get started on writing. And I find that AI is a really good catalyst for that. Like, say I want to write a blog post about this, or I want to write about this, and I throw in a lot of information. It gives me something. I generally end up editing it a lot and like restructuring it, but at least it gets me past that blank page stage, which is really hard for a lot of people. And so if people are like feeling challenged about creating content, they really should make LLM their friends. But you really need to give it a lot of context about yourself. I have fed so much information to Claude, and I have yelled at it so often about the way that it writes for me that it really now knows my tone. By the way, I can't stand how AI uses the word genuine all the time. And so in my Miriam skill or context, it says, and don't use the word genuine. It drives me crazy.
okay.
You know what? I put negative words in my description of my voice and tone as well because it started putting some, and I was like, I would never use that word. Like literally, I would
Please
just
don't
never
use
use
those
that word.
enthusiastic, flowery words for me. I'm like a matter of fact person. I told it enough times that it got it. Like, stop being so excited about everything. It's not that exciting.
So this is interesting.
And
And
mine is
maybe,
the opposite. I'm like, make it more excited. Sorry, Roger.
so what if we expand on this just a little bit, Miriam, and kind of talk about your workflow with generative AI when you're approaching, let's say, a writing project? It sounds like Claude is your go-to. Is that relatively new, or have you always been a Claude believer?
So it is relatively new. I would say maybe I started using it a month or two ago. Like, I feel like it's that new. But it
Okay.
immediately was like blowing my mind in terms of the output. Something that I'm writing up now for myself, but also I hope to share it on my new blog, which is I've invested a ton of time in the context side of things and the documentation side of things, like a ton. For example, I work quite closely with the Angie team at Elementor. Angie's
Mhm.
our agentic AI. I
Mhm.
created what I call the Angie brain in Claude, where I feed it a lot of information about Angie and I keep it updated and it updates its brain. And that's the context that's leveraged whenever I want to do something related to Angie. So I have an Angie brain. I have, of course, like the Miriam context. I created a documentation process for when I'm working on projects in Claude because it's like a known issue, but I had been like doing okay until I hit the wall with the issue, which is that AI forgets it. First of all, if you have too big a context window, it starts to like not really know what it's doing anymore.
Mhm.
So I actually built my website in one long chat, which is not ideal, but it was going so well. I was like, I am not messing with this. I'm going to just keep chatting to Claude in this one chat. But then chat was like, Claude was like, I'm about to have to shut down. I'm going to have to shut down this chat. And
Wow.
what I learned the hard way is that Claude has no idea what Claude is doing. Like, if you leave that chat and you go to another chat, then that new chat is like a whole other person and has no idea. So luckily I had enough context left to wrap up a lot of the knowledge in some way, but it wasn't sufficient. I was able to get going in chat 2 with that, but at that point, what I did was I kind of stopped and I created a more thorough documentation process with Claude. So I have at that point, I had 3 documents that went with me for every project. And at the end of, let's say, a working session, they would get updated with whatever was done. And that still wasn't enough. I discovered that because I actually developed a plugin. I actually developed 2 plugins. I'm having the best time. I'm like, you're like, when are you getting work done? I'm like, I'm not sure. I developed 2 plugins, which I haven't released. One is it runs like a light speed scan across like your selected pages on your site. And it just makes it really easy to do that like on an ongoing basis. Why did I want that? Because I kept making changes to my site. I wanted to make sure they weren't degrading the performance, but I didn't want to have to check page by page. That was super annoying. So I created this plugin, but I ran out of context window as usual. And I opened another one and I brought my 3 documents with me and it's kept making this mistake. And I was like, no, but you knew how to do it in the other one. Anyways, I learned that I needed a fourth document. And I think this is important for people to know. It's, I think we call it the decisions document. Basically, just like humans, how did I learn how to build websites? I did a lot of things wrong. And then I learned from that how to do it right. I logged that in my brain, right? Or actually, I at the time, I was so appreciative to the WordPress community for that, for just the general sharing of information and knowledge with each other, that I actually started a blog where I documented my learnings. So I documented them, and that's how I always got better at building websites. So with Claude, it learned something, applied it to the plugin. It wasn't documented. And then when I brought it over to the next chat, it just knew how the plugin was, but not how it got there. And it turns out the journey is super important in AI. So now I have this fourth document, which is the decisions log, so that if I ever have to move to another chat or another whatever, I've started working more organized. I do projects now, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Even in projects, you need the documentation is so important. I was just reading this post about how documentation has become like the architecture infrastructure, like more than code now, how you document your work matters most. It's really interesting. And I'm just constantly trying to like evolve and improve how I work with it. But that's just some of my learnings with that.
Fascinating.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really
It's a crazy
cool.
world.
So now tell me, Miriam, you in Elementor, there are a lot of AI tools, and you're using Angie and throughout Elementor, right? So why would you go and use Claude to build your website versus just trying to work inside of the AI tools inside of Elementor? Was it because the context build up?
So it's a very good question. So Angie specifically, and actually most of the AI tools that exist for WordPress, they do an okay job of building sites. Just to be honest, they all do an okay job of building sites. So I use Angie for ongoing management of the site or creating certain features. But the initial setup, I did it with Claude because, like I said, I'm super picky and I wanted to see what output it could give me, and it gave me great output. Also, part of the process that I used, which is similar to the process that I used to use, but it's like a different level, was that I first created a prototype of the site with Claude. So it was just like the front end. In the past, we would do it with like Photoshop or something, right? We would like design it. Here, it was a design, but it was actually like already like a live website. It was like HTML, and I could, use it like a website. You can't prototype something in WordPress exactly um, yet. And that just was a process that really works well for me. So prototyped in Claude, static site, and then converted that to WordPress, and then installed Angie in that WordPress site. But the team is working. So we have this tool called Site Planner, which allows you to you go through this kind of brief process with the AI. It asks you questions about what you want the website to do, and then it builds the site for you. And then you can then take that and then, tweak it, polish it, wrap it up, and then start using the site. The team's reworking that for a number of reasons, one of which is Elementor's V4 version is now in production. It's an atomic approach to developing sites, and we want the site planner flow to work with that. So there's like a lot of reworking being done, but hopefully once that gets launched, which I think is the next few months, then sites will be able to be built with Angie as well. And then you can use it for the full flow.
Fantastic.
Super exciting. Well, as a slight shift here, WordPress, the project, is trying to incorporate AI further into it. We've got the Abilities API. There's an AI team now. As someone who's deeply involved with the project, but also working with a company that's building on top of the project, what's your take on how WordPress is handling things, and what are people maybe not seeing that they should be paying attention to that's being worked on?
So the WordPress core AI team has approached this really well, I think, taking into consideration the importance of bringing AI to the WordPress project, even though it doesn't quite align with how the WordPress project has always been developed, because we're creating a sort of dependency on third-party commercial products, right? And the idea behind WordPress was that it was never dependent. Well, not the idea, but one of the ideas was that it was never dependent on a third-party commercial product. You could run it. You could just run it. You didn't have to connect to anything. You don't have to pay anything. Maybe hosting. That was it. If you wanted to pay for other products because it brought added value to you, that's your choice, but it was not a requirement. Here too, it's not a requirement. And so that's what's smart about how they are creating it, but it is still taking things to a different level, because it will be part of core that there is way to connect to an LLM of your choice. So that's already very different. But I appreciate that they made that decision because while it might be somewhat controversial, prepping WordPress for a commercial product, it's necessary. If we want WordPress to have a present and a future, it needs to have the infrastructure to be used with AI. It just has to be. Otherwise, we're going to see continued reduced market share and WordPress will become irrelevant. So I'm glad that the leadership of WordPress and the Core AI team decided to make it happen despite the somewhat controversial nature of it. And I think that the way that they did it is really balanced. It's there if you want it, not there if you don't want it. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, you can connect however you want. And I think we'll see going forward the ability to, we already see it. It started out with 3 LLMs you can connect, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude, my bestie. But we already saw some developers create additional connectors to Grok and some other ones that I can't remember what they're called. So, and that's one of the amazing things about WordPress. And I think we're going to see that strength come through, which is the extensibility of WordPress. WordPress from almost from the start was built so that you could build on top of it. And that led to a system of 60,000 plugins and who knows how many themes and people building all sorts of products and solutions for WordPress. And you can choose your stack and you can find a solution for almost anything you need. And I think we'll see that here with AI, where this is just the start. And we're going to see many interesting and innovative solutions being developed for WordPress that allow people to pick and choose, again, how they bring AI into their workflow. Angie is just one of them. And I think it's exciting times for WordPress. And big kudos to the team for what they do. We're very proud to sponsor one of the contributors to the AI team. We think it's super important for the future of WordPress, and the future of WordPress is important to us. So I think we're going to see exciting things.
Excellent.
Awesome. And before we get out of the whole AI world there, I would like to just kind of, because I feel like you're the right person to talk to, one, just where you came from, and then now that you're at a page builder company, and that is, how does static web pages and AI intersect here? Because that is always usually right. The biggest complaint for anyone on page builders is the bloat and things like that. So are you guys looking at things with static, using AI to create static pages, things like that?
I actually think now is the perfect time for statically generated WordPress sites. The thinking behind Static was that WordPress is a very strong CMS that has everything you need, and it's open source. So there's no vendor lock-in, and it is, for many organizations, people and companies, it's the ideal choice. However, in some ways, the ideal way to run a production site is in a static format that removes a lot of the issues that you can have with a WordPress site related to security, scalability, and performance. I actually just saw in one of the Facebook groups, they're talking about this new vulnerability that if you have a particular file in your site, you have been infected. With a static site, that's just not happening. And even with my new personal site, I've been pushing it to optimize the performance. I want like 100 score on page speed insights or light speed. Like I want that. And me and Claude, my buddy, we've been working. Claudette. Oh, I should call it Claudette. We've been working very hard on optimizing it. And I did get, when I put it up there, the page speed insight score was 68, which is terrible. And then me and Claude worked together and now it's over 90. So I'm very happy, but I am not happy enough. But it's very hard to push WordPress farther than that for various reasons. So you can, but it's hard. And if it's a static site, then you kind of get a lot of the performance just out of the box. So I think because people are living in this vibe coding era and they're building a lot of like kind of static applications in many ways, and they're experiencing that, it might be something that is felt to be missing in WordPress land. But that's just my personal opinion. At Elementor, we're not really doing anything about that. I am tempted with Claude to develop a solution for my site, but I do have to get work done. But yeah, I don't know. And there are existing solutions out there that do a good job. There's Simply Static, which people can use. So yeah, so I don't know. We'll see if there's a comeback for that. But I do think that there's room for it.
I do too.
Some hosts would argue that a good caching system would also solve your issues too.
Oh, please don't get me started on caching. Oh my
Cache
God.
me outside.
Yeah. Elementor hosting also has a lot of caching happening. I understand why. They're not different. All the hosting companies, and they actually everyone celebrates the caching, and it definitely brings benefits, but
and headaches.
challenges.
Well,
So
moving on then. Moving on.
no, we love cache all the things.
Or as
How
I like to
funny.
pronounce it, kaching. No,
Cache all the
okay.
things.
Cache.
Cachet.
I love it.
Cache sounds very, very chic that way.
That's right.
All right, let's start talking about the future. Gosh, so I've got a whole question here that I wrote and I need to read it out. So you have a talk where you're mentioning serving the whole stack. How should hosting companies and agencies be preparing their infrastructure for the load of an AI-driven site? Is there even a difference that they need to be putting into contention? I mean, tokens start to become a conversation. Where should agencies be positioning themselves so they're ready for actually working with these tools and the real world implications of trying to implement this stuff?
Hosting companies definitely need to consider AI from two angles, I would say. One is the additional load that the LLMs are putting on their servers, right? It's a very high demand technology that is using up a lot of resources. And the question is, are those resources that they're sucking out of the hosting companies, they're using their server bandwidth? It costs money. Is it bringing value? And I don't know that there's a clear answer to that. I know that I want the LLMs to be accessing my website as much as they want because I want them to have all that information and I don't want them to miss anything. If they want to scrape my site 50,000 times a day, I want them to do that if that's what's necessary. That's what my site is for. And I hope that people come around to that. I don't know. Okay, I know why people are afraid of that because it reduces click through to your site. And we're so used to living in an age where we measure the success of a site by how many pages were viewed and how many things were clicked on. But what's happening now is if you succeed in appearing in an LLM's responses, the people that click through to your site have a higher level of trust in you and tend to have a higher conversion rate for whatever it is that you want to happen. So if people can wrap their head around moving beyond an era of how many clicks did I get to how many high quality people did I get to my site, then I think we'll see that making sure that LLMs have ongoing access to the content on our site has high value.
Yeah.
But that's still a question. The hosting companies are definitely having to tackle that. Like, what do we do with it? Do we block it? Do we block some of it? And different hosting companies are taking on different approaches to it. It's definitely interesting. And I don't think there's exactly a right answer. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is if you are a hosting company that's your business is dependent on hosting WordPress sites, you need to give your users an AI experience because it's already was like this, but I think it's just become more extreme, which is you're not necessarily competing against other hosting companies. You're now competing against Lovable. And people want that experience. And if you can give it to them in WordPress, I think there's a huge advantage. You're giving them open source, fully owned website with the back end and the front end, they're ready to go. And it's resilient, it's reliable, it's battle tested, it's a great product. But we all need to give WordPress users access to this amazing AI experience as well. So how do you do that? Do you develop your own products? Do you partner with other companies? Do you offer some other approach to it? I don't know. Part of the idea behind Angie is that anyone, wherever their site is hosted, can install it and get up and running with AI. They don't have to connect anything. It's not complicated. It's just there once you've installed it and you can start chatting with it and doing stuff. And, hopefully we'll see other things like that as well. But hosting companies, to stay relevant, need to just bring that to the table. With regards to agencies, I think that there's an advantage. First of all, obviously, to using AI to build your site, because like I said, you can go from building great sites to building mind-blowing, amazing sites because nothing's out of your hands now. Nothing's out of reach. You can make it as amazing as you want. You just keep working with AI until you get it there. I think it's worth giving your users an AI sidekick in WordPress because the idea behind building a WordPress site for clients is that they can then manage it, right? WordPress isn't always so straightforward for people. They can't always understand where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to do. If they have an AI sidekick, again, like Angie, sorry, but it's just obviously like the one that I'm using is top of mind. And I don't know of another one. If there was another one, I'd mention them as well. If they have Angie there, then they can just be like, I want to write a post. I'm a bakery. I want to write a post about sourdough bread making.
Yeah.
And then it can do it for it. And you can even be like, publish it, add it to this category, and add a featured image of sourdough bread. And you're good. Like, And then for the agency, the benefit is their users feel more successful. Their like clients feel more successful. And potentially also there's less of the clients, calling them up going, I don't understand. I can't do it. Whatever. And like, it can save them time. So
Sure.
there's a lot of opportunities there. It's a question of how we embed these things, how we make sure there's guardrails. On the one hand, we want to give, let's say, clients the ability to do that. We don't want to give clients the ability to delete their database, or something, or delete their own user or whatever it is, so there's that. But I think everyone needs to be exploring it, and it will make their work better, make their clients feel happier and more successful. For hosting companies, hopefully it can not only reduce churn, which is a very big pain point in hosting companies, but increase success and lifetime value from customers.
Love it.
And I do think agencies are whether they want to or not, they're going to have to embrace this for their clients because,
Yeah.
I used to say, 20 years ago, I would have to convince a company that they needed a website at that point, because they're like, why do I need that? Well, why do you need a sign in front of your building? I don't know, but let's talk about this. And then people were coming to me saying, I want a website, right? So that changed. And right now, I feel like we're in that mode. I've actually had 2 different clients in the last 2 weeks that have called me and said, hey, are y'all using AI? Is there anything you can do for us with this? And so we're going to start getting some pull from the clients to say, what do you know about this? Because they're looking at us as the experts, right? And so what do you know about this and how can we use it to better our business, whatever it might be?
By the way, so something came up with my site after I didn't I launched it and I didn't plan on like publicizing it at all for a while. I just wanted it to run. But then I posted about it in the post status community, and I figured that's how it got attention. But I shared it there because I wanted to share my experience of building with AI, and I also wanted to learn from others. So I wanted to hear how other people are using AI. Then Matt Moe got wind of my site, and he was excited about it, and he posted about it all over the place. And so my site got a lot of attention. Talk about a hockey stick and stats.
Got those clicks. Hey, you got those clicks.
I got the clicks. I'm so happy. So most feedback yeah, exactly. Most feedback that I got was very positive. People were supportive. They were like, oh, it's like great. It's beautiful. And all. But a few people were like, well, what's so great about building a site with AI? Why would you show off? Okay, I wasn't showing off, but this was the attitude. Why are you showing off that you had AI build your site for you? What's the value of that? Why didn't you that you're not spending more time on it? It was like a time thing. So first of all, we as humans have always been looking for ways to reduce the repetitive, not value add work that we do, so we can increase where we do bring value, which is usually creativity, strategy, vision, and things like that. So I think agencies are going to have to struggle with this a bit, and we all need to think about the messaging around it, which is I probably spent at least 50 hours on my site with Claude. Okay, so it wasn't like one prompt and done project at all. Now, if I'm an agency, I could spend 50 hours on a site in the past before AI, and the results wouldn't have been amazing, but I could say, I spent 50 hours, pay me for 50 hours. Now I could build that same site, let's say that same quality, in 5 to 10 hours. Does that mean that now I should get paid less? No, because we need to be measured on outputs, because I can direct the AI to get the results that I want. And that's where the value is. But people are going to struggle with that concept, that idea that I didn't sit and spend 200 hours on my site. For some people, it makes it less valuable. And I don't think that's the right attitude, but it will exist. And agencies are going to have to think about how to answer that when people are like, but wait, this beautiful, amazing, performant, secure site that you built for me, it only took you 20 hours instead of 100 hours. I'm going to pay you 20 hours of work. But that's not necessarily how it should work. I don't know the answer to that, but just heads up, everyone. That's going to be an argument that you're going to get.
Well, and it feels like maybe the solution there is instead of selling hours, you're selling output. You're selling a project, right? And I mean, when I had my agency, that's how I did it too. As I was like, look, here's what I'm doing. This is what you're going to pay me.
Totally. But even that, for me, even though it was a per project price, it was still based on an hourly estimate. But one of the benefits of how we can build websites now, in my opinion, is in my agency, what we did was we did a very thorough pre-site process with clients that they had to pay us for. I don't remember I know the Hebrew word that we called it. I don't know how to say it in English, but it was like the site plan, architecture,
assessment,
layout. It was very thorough. It was based on this, we can now build your site. Now we could do it the way that I prototype my site, which is prompt, get feedback from this customer and show them something that they can actually click through and use and be like, oh, I like this, move this here, move this there. Hey, Claude, move this here, move this there. Okay, now we're going to build the website off of this and turn it into a WordPress site for you to manage. So that can get a lot of clarity in the first stage and get a lot of alignment, which can save a lot of pain and friction that I think often comes from like miscommunication between the agency and the customer, not because people don't know how to communicate. It's just that's just how it often works. So that's a big advantage that can work to the benefit of the customers and maybe to the agencies. And maybe actually that first stage is almost where the big value is of planning, strategizing it, making sure that it really meets your needs, and then moving on to the website. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there, but I think there are advantages.
Very
Quick
exciting
question.
times.
Did you,
Yeah.
when you started working with Claude, did you tell Claude that the ultimate goal was for this to be a WordPress site?
Totally. I said,
Okay.
first build this it's important to clarify to Claude and all AI because I think the default tendency is to build anything webby as React apps. And we don't want React apps for a website. That's terrible. That's like really bad. So I said to Claude, I want you to first build it HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like vanilla JavaScript,
Okay.
no frameworks, no nothing. And then we're going to convert it to a WordPress site. The first iteration of the WordPress site, by the way, it hard coded all of the content into the theme. So I couldn't manage it. I had to, so there was a
Wow.
lot like, and that's also, you need to understand WordPress to make sure that it's doing things right. Like, it was smart. It built custom fields with advanced custom fields from the beginning. Like it told me install advanced custom fields and you're going to have all these fields, which was great. Like that's how I managed my timeline. I have like a section for like media appearances to keep track of them. So it's also, so that's a custom post type. Sorry. It built out the custom post types, which was very smart. And it built out custom fields for different things that I needed managed within the post. But it like built out a site options area that was managing some of the main content. And I was like, that shouldn't be there. That should be in the like main edit area and things like that. Like you need to be able to direct it to get it to the best output, not only in the front end, but also in the back end. I actually, based on that experience and my love of documenting things now, I created a WordPress site building skill so that the idea is, and I haven't tested it yet, the next time I build a WordPress site with Claude, it won't make a lot of the mistakes that it made the first round. So
Have you considered sharing this for other people to use?
totally. I am looking forward to doing that. I am in the middle of writing posts about my experience and I will share that skill so that
Yeah.
people can use it. The one thing that skill might not have, and it will be interesting to see how it works for people, is that, I mentioned the importance of a decisions log. This didn't
Okay.
work, so I did this. At that point, I didn't know about that yet. Like I hadn't started documenting that. So the skill is just like do things like this. It doesn't say, and don't do things like this necessarily, but it still might be a good enough platform and context for people to build pretty good like WordPress infrastructures. So stay tuned. I'm working on all of this. I want to get it out there as part of the open source ethos of WordPress, which I've always loved. And I always loved sharing my knowledge. So I'm looking forward to sharing that.
Awesome.
Hopefully soon. So stay tuned. Subscribe to my RSS feed. I don't have any other way to subscribe to my site.
We'll
How
have
funny.
links. We'll have links.
I was going to say, yes, we all should keep watching the sweet site that Miriam built, I think is what Matt called it.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Oh, I was very flattered.
Yes.
Yeah, it
That
was
was very cool.
very nice. I was very excited to build the site and I was excited to eventually like bring it to the WordPress community. It just like happened before I expected it to. So
All right.
yeah.
Well, I think we should head on into rapid fire. What do you think, Roger?
I say, I mean, I could go on for days talking to you, Miriam. You're wonderful to talk to. You've got so much enthusiasm. But yeah, let's start wrapping this thing up. What do we got in rapid fire, Robbie?
Well, I'm actually going to say I'm going to the second rapid fire question because I like it, and that is your travel stack. Because we know you are all around the world at WordCamps and other events. And so, what is your one non-tech item though that you have to have with you for travel?
Okay. I have a few. I'll start with like
Okay.
the one that maybe people wouldn't think of. My neck pillow. It doesn't matter how you're flying. If you're flying business, premium, or economy. You never know. And it has saved me many times of being in a comfortable situation where I could definitely like use some rest or more comfort. And that is with me. It is not going under the plane. And one time I flew and I was so upset. I immediately bought another one in the airport, which actually ended up being better than the one that I had. And I was like, oh, this is even better. So my neck pillow. And I'll just mention one other thing, which is my Doc Martens. So the conferences that we go to demand a lot of standing and walking, and also even airports. Oh my gosh, like we're seriously trekking through everything. And so I have my Doc Martens for like getting through all of those kilometers of travel and walking. And they are always with me at conferences. So those are two things.
And they're super cool.
I love them. Thank you. They make me happy.
All right. So we're talking a lot about WordPress. And it's interesting. I was just talking to a younger developer yesterday, and he was like, "Yeah, we can still do WordPress stuff if you want." And in the green room, we were, or earlier in this episode, we were talking about how WordPress is dead. What do you think is something in legacy WordPress that people are like, "Oh yeah, no, nobody uses that anymore," that you think is absolutely still critical? Everybody should be paying attention to it and utilizing it.
That is a good question. Just came across something that I hadn't really used before, which is the customizer section.
Ooh,
Yeah,
controversy.
I just had never touched it, but with Claude, I wanted to add social media like links to my site, for example, but I wanted to be able to manage them. And it was like, let's use the customizer. And I was like, I love that. Why do I love that? Because it's built in. I like to use things that are already built into the infrastructure. I don't want to create something new. Like it has posts, it has custom post types. Like as much as possible, attitude has always been like stick with what it has. Don't add layers on top of it. It keeps things cleaner and more future proof. And I like to work that way. It's like, that is actually a really interesting concept. And I was like, what else could we use the customizer for? So I used it to add my favicon, which of course Claude created. Like, what do you even do, Miriam? I don't know. I just use Claude. It's just it's so amazing. Anyways, I would take a look at the customizer. It's interesting that it's there. I don't actually know what its goal is, but it can be quite useful. So there you go.
There's some historical trouble there with the
Yeah.
customizer when we came out with Gutenberg and with full site editing, actually. And so it's very interesting. We'll have to get Weston Reuter onto the show at some point because he actually built it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, very
I
interesting.
love
He
you.
like led the project or something like that.
No way. Interesting. Well, I had
Yeah,
never really looked at it. And then Claude was like, how about that? And I was like, I like that. I like it better than like it built me the site options page. But I didn't like that because that was like adding something that didn't exist on the site. And I'd rather just use native stuff. So, anyways, there's that.
Awesome.
very smart.
All right, last question. If you had a $10,000 bet right now for 2030, would you say that the web is still powered by PHP, or do you think AI is going to create some other foundation?
First of all, I think in 2030, $10,000 would be worth like $5,000.
Or five.
$5.
I was like, it's not the best bet to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully the world will be in a better place by then. I don't think AI is going to create something new. What we see with AI is that it ingested and uses existing programming languages. TypeScript became one of its favorites, and it's just going to keep using that. It might develop new approaches to using the existing programming languages. I don't really foresee it like creating something new. I think we will abstract ourselves more and more away from the code to the, like what I was talking about, like the documentation being the code, where even the way we build out the coding workflow will actually just be documents that are then translated into code. Like we're really going to abstract ourselves away. So I think the underlying programming language will matter less. Most people won't really care what's going on underneath the hood as long as it's working. I do think that WordPress, so what we're seeing already is a trend of WordPress's market share going down slightly. And there's this other category of sites that's called like no CMS, meaning
None.
either they're not using a CMS to power the site, or it's not recognizable. But that part of the market is growing because of the vibe coding tools, where people are just creating more and more, much more easily websites. They're just throwing things up into the web, and so you're gonna see an increase of that. I think as WordPress has such a strong infrastructure and it just has so much out of the box. And that's why I chose to build my site on WordPress. Not just because, I mean, I'm not like the most objective person, but I really believed before I built the site that WordPress would be the best option. And after building the site, I feel like I've confirmed it for myself. Because when you don't remember all of the things that it offers to you in a very high quality way that you don't have to build out, user permissions. I built an app on one of the vibe coding tools, and the user trying to add more users to it was a nightmare, like a nightmare. And here you have it out of the box. Comments if you want it, the post management categories tab, everything is it's just there. E-commerce is there if you want it. So I think that we will see a further reduction in WordPress's market share, but WordPress is so strong that it's not going anywhere. It's now like 42%. Maybe we'll go to 38%. That's still 38% of the internet. And while people will be choosing to do no CMS, a lot of people will do what they've done in the past, I think, which is come back to WordPress, because when you choose the vibe coded solution, you're stuck with them. Like yeah, like it's just, you're there, and good luck to you trying to get out of there. And these React based apps, they're problematic for accessibility and SEO and performance. Google wrote a report about the extremely problematic aspect of performance in these React type apps. So I think a lot of people will continue to choose it. It's also inexpensive, and in places where why should we have to pay on an ongoing basis for something that we don't like? It's not, yeah, we pay for hosting, but it can be a pretty low cost in a lot of places in the world. Vibe coded tools are not accessible. They're not an option. So anyways, I think WordPress will continue to play a big role. But we'll also see an uptick in the no CMS sites. It's just how it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Excellent.
Miriam, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We call our guest informants, and you definitely were a very valuable informant today, I feel like. So thank you very much.
Very happy to be informant for you. And thank you for your very good questions. It was an interesting conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Miriam.
Thank you.
And wait, one last thing, your website address for the people who are just listening, because we'll put it in the notes, but what is your sweet site's address?
So first of all, it's already ranking pretty well. So if you search for Miriam Schwab, you'll probably see it up there. Good job, Google or whatever. But it's miriamschwab.me, because someone has miriamschwab.com. They didn't do anything with it, but that's miriamschwab.me.
All right, Roger. That was as usual, we talk forever. I don't know if this is just you and I or what, but we can talk to people all day long. So it was a very long conversation. Obviously, if people want to, we're going to debrief it very briefly, debriefing.
Hey, but if it was a Joe Rogan episode, this thing would be short. So come on, let's keep it in mind here.
That's right. So obviously I love the journey that Miriam took. I thought it was a very interesting story. And I thought one of the things listening to that journey, and when we were talking to her about the corporate America. I mean, because we're in the U.S. and so when I think of corporate America I think of corporate America, right? And it was interesting to hear that she sees a big difference between corporate America and corporate Israel, and I think that is something to look at. I mean, and even we think about any corporate UK and things like that.
Sure.
They have their own flavors, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I even commented in there that at Kinsta, it's a different flavor from the other corporations that I've worked for in America. And to be fair, we were founded in Budapest, so Europe. So it's a different approach. And I think the takeaway there is two things. One is, if you're looking at becoming an agency owner, she's got a great story there because she left corporate work to become an agency owner. So there's good takeaways there. On the flip side, if you're thinking about maybe leaving your agency like I did because I just got burnt out, it just wasn't for me, and I went back into the corporate world, make sure you're looking for companies that match what you're looking for. Be selective. You have skills. Like you don't just need to take any job out there unless you need to. No shame on that.
Right.
But look for companies with remote work. Look for companies that have their executives. Are they in Slack? Do they talk to the regular people? Because there are companies where they don't. I couldn't work at one of those again. I hope I don't never need to. So I loved that part of the story as well. Like some really practical career advice in there.
Interestingly, though, both of you used to be agency owners, and now in your corporate jobs, you deal with agencies. So that's kind of interesting. Talk about using your expertise. That's
Full
right.
circle,
That's right.
I believe. Yes, absolutely.
And so, then the other thing is she might have talked about our favorite topic, AI again.
Absolutely. I wonder if it's still going to be a thing this year. What do you think?
I don't know, maybe next month we won't be talking about it. No, we are. What are we talking about? But what is
Absolutely.
we talk about AI in all of the episodes, but this one to me was a little bit different because Miriam, really what we're talking about with her is her experience she had building out a website using AI and AI
hmm
tools and trying it with different ones and her experiences there. And so I did find that was a little refreshing because we're just talking not possibilities, we're talking about actuality. And I thought
Yeah.
that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, actual implementation of the tools. This is something that I really love hearing. I love reading about this. I am trying to obviously build things with these, but to actually see somebody and I loved her timeline on it, right? It was like a couple of days to kind of get things stood up.
Mhm.
But then it was about 2 weeks of refinement work, and I think
Mhm.
that's the important thing that people need to keep in mind, and this takes me back to the Dreamweaver days, right? Remember when Dreamweaver came out and everyone was like, "Oh, I'll just create a site in, like, 15 minutes," and it's like, "No,
No,
you
you
can get
won't. But
something up, but you're gonna need to go in and fix a lot of stuff," and I think it's the same thing with AI. It's a little bit faster, there's a little bit more magic, but you've still got to put a person in there and working on these things.
absolutely, absolutely. So I think we've kind of touched on the main things that we had in that, but to really get value out of it is you've got to listen to the whole interview. So if you didn't
Oh,
listen to the whole
yeah.
interview, go back and listen to it. Or if you listen to it and you're like, now how did she go about doing that again? Listen to it again and go try it yourself. Build your own site, just to, if nothing else, just to get your fingers into the pie, as it were, and give it a go and start learning. If you have not started doing this, especially if you're running a web agency, you need to try these tools. You need to know what is out there, if not for yourself to use, so you know what you're up against.
100%. And I thought, there's one other thing that was very interesting before we shut down this
Mhm.
segment here is WordPress is still relevant. We need to remember why WordPress became relevant originally, and it was really for our clients, right? You don't want to get that call of, hey, can you add a comma to this
Mhm.
page? Like, yes, even if you're billing for that, it's still annoying work that you don't want to do. And that's why we got WordPress. So you could create a user, you could lock them down so they could only mess up so many things,
Yep.
and it's still built in. And if you're vibe coding stuff, you're not going to vibe code that. And then also, she pointed out with these React sites, they're not accessible, they're not SEO friendly. And what has that just done? You've just eliminated yourself from showing up on Google and in the AI tools. So,
Mhm.
as much as we move forward, we need to remember that there is still a foundation to build upon, and we should just keep using these tools that we've got.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And one other little thing there with that is, talking about possibly now using AI to help you create those static sites from your CMS so you get the benefit of both. I mean, who better than Miriam to talk about that, because that was her product that got bought out there. I mean, she was a little ahead of her time, I think. But like she said, this could be the time now. So, all right.
Absolutely. No, very exciting. And I just want to point out to everybody, like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. All right, let's move on to the next segment.
All right. See y'all.
Roger, copy that.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Roger That segment for this amazing episode with our good friend Miriam. Today, Roger That is, let's talk about AI exhaustion. I don't know about you all, but first of all I ever hear about is AI. All I'm ever thinking about is AI. I'm working with a lot of AI tools on my phone mostly anymore. I'm talking to AI. And so it's fair to say, hey, we've got some AI exhaustion. And in fact, I've been giving a talk recently that's talking about how we're maybe not getting as much productivity as we would like or as is being hyped to us. And there was a research report by METR recently that showed that while we perceive ourselves being 20% faster on tasks, the result is we're actually 19% slower. And this was done with a survey of thousands of developers who are working with AI tools to do coding projects. And what they found is that our perception of how much faster we think we are versus the reality is definitely skewed. And the, explanations for this are, we're caught up in the hype of it. We're really enjoying these new tools. We're playing them like they're video games. But the reality is that we're having to spend time fixing their errors, their hallucinations. And we're also getting this cognitive load built onto us, right? And so we went from technical debt to cognitive debt. So every time you've got a new chat window going on, you're keeping that in mind while it's still working, and you're carrying that around with yourself. So AI exhaustion, it's a real thing. They're talking about brain fry is on the rise, and that's not just because I went to school at CU Boulder. It's actual brain fry is result from the increase in cognitive load. So what can we do about this? First of all, we need to start acknowledging that these tools, while they are really cool and they're pretty magical, they're not a replacement for everything, right? Left is still left, right is still right, up is down, or up is up, down is down, water's wet, and we still need to live in the real world. So what should we be doing? Let's implement a couple of things. So the first one is pauses. When you're using these AI tools, yes, you can now get a project done 10 times faster, 100 times faster. Does that mean you should jump immediately into the next project? Probably not. Why don't you take a moment, reflect on maybe what you did, spend a little bit more time on the documentation, which, as we just learned from Miriam, documentation is going to be one of the critical things moving forward to actually use the AI tools. And then how about this? If you have a team, why don't you give them the day off? Why don't you give them a week off? They're going to remember that way more than hitting their OKRs. So, think about pauses, building pauses into there. Another thing is, let's start talking about these tools with each other, how we're using them, what's working, what's not working, acknowledging that we're using the tools to get things done, and maybe realizing sometimes that we didn't need to use the tool and we maybe could have gotten it done faster and maybe even a little bit better just by using our old brains. Remember those? RI also exists, real intelligence. So that's your Roger that for this segment. AI exhaustion, it's a real thing. Be aware of it. Take a deep breath, maybe walk away from the computer for a little while, do some meditation, or get a puppy like I mentioned on the last episode. That's what I've got for you today. I'll see you in the next one.
All right, it is time for another Robbie's Radar, where I share tools that make things run smoother and keep the business side dialed in. Today, I want to talk about something that's not flashy, but it is absolutely critical, and that is your accounting system. For me, that's QuickBooks Online. And now here's why I like it and why I think it's a great fit for agencies. First, it's cloud-based, so you might choose some other different software, that's fine, but I highly recommend getting one that is online. This means you can access it from anywhere, laptop, desktop, iPad, your phone, most importantly, while you're traveling. And if you need to check out something quickly, cash flow, an invoice, an expense, you don't have to be tied to one machine or one office. Second, and this is a very big one, your accountant and your bookkeeper can access it as well. So you're not exporting files, emailing spreadsheets, Lord forbid, or sending backups. They're in the same system, seeing the same data in real time. So when you have a question, or they're like helping you clean something up or preparing for taxes, it's all happening live, and that removes a ton of friction. Third, it keeps your financials organized without overcomplicating things. You can track your income and expenses, send invoices, reconcile accounts, run reports, all in one central location. And for most agencies, that is exactly what you need. Nothing overly complex, just clear visibility into your numbers. Now, here's where it really matters for your business and success. When your financials are clean and up to date and accessible, you make better decisions, you understand your margins, you know where your money is going, and you're not guessing at tax time. Because believe me, the last thing you want to do is be guessing at tax time. And tying this back to a previous R&R where I talked about hiring an accountant, QuickBooks Online makes that relationship with your accountant even stronger because your accountant isn't working off of outdated data. They're right there alongside you inside the same system. They can advise you better, they can catch things earlier, and they can help you kind of just stay ahead instead of playing catch up. At the end of the day, this isn't about bookkeeping. It's about having a clear, real-time view of your business. And when you have that, everything just gets easier. So if you're still managing finances in spreadsheets or a desktop tool that only one person can access, I'd seriously look at moving into something like QuickBooks Online. The access from anywhere and collaboration alone make it worth it. This has been Robbie's Radar. More intel on the horizon.
Hey, Robbie, welcome to another segment of R&R. I got to say, this is like my favorite part of the show, besides the interview.
Yeah. Me too. Mainly, I think because it makes us think about our own R&R that we probably are not as good about doing as we should be, right? I mean, so I think that's why I also like listen to podcasts and read books about how can you be, save your mental health while you're running a business and things like that. So
100%. 100%.
Yep. So what do you have for us today, Roger?
Well, I don't know if you're watching the video at home, kids. I think you might be able to tell that I want to talk about bicycles. So I've got a shirt that my wife got me. It's got a bunch of bicycles on it. It's polyester, so it's good for sweating in, and the sweat gets really stinky. No, it doesn't. But it evaporates off. Anyway, I love riding my bicycle for a whole lot of reasons. First of all, it's just a really nice way to go and do something without any type of machinery, and you have to focus on that activity. You really can't be on your phone. And it's just a great way to get away from all of the busyness that we're all surrounded with all the time. You can get away from the AI exhaustion from my Roger That segment. And also, it's a really great way to get some exercise because you're actually doing something fun. And so you're not maybe, unless you're on a hill, you're not paying attention to how much you're actually exercising. And that's the best type of exercise to me, the type where you're not even realizing that you're exercising. So for me today, R&R is all about riding your bicycle. How about you? What do you got, Robbie?
Well, I will have to say, usually when you're talking about things and you're talking about all this exercise, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, do what he says. But I will say bicycle riding is one of my favorite activities, though, by the way. So yeah, you hit one that I really do like to do. And I don't like to think of it as exercise. I like to just think of it as it's a fun activity. So
absolutely. Oh, I have a funny joke for you.
Okay.
How many kids with ADD does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know.
Let's ride bikes.
All right. I like that. Well, what I want to talk about today is shutting down. And I think that just you have to shut things down. Like you have to find a point in your day, and this is going to be hard if you're the agency owner. I get it. This is the hardest thing, is to make yourself finish that last email and go, you know what? I really don't have to answer another email until tomorrow. I really don't have to sit here at this computer and do anything. I really should get up from this computer and shut it down, walk away, and have a little life that night. Get some good sleep. And then that next morning, you're refreshed and you're inspired to do more. But if you don't take those times to shut down, and I do realize there are times you can't, you're in a deadline mode and all that, and you're burning the midnight oil. I do get that. But when you can, and you have to make time to do this, you have to do those shutdowns and go have a life after work. Because if you try to just burn the midnight oil every day forever, you will burn out and you will not like what you're doing anymore. And the whole point of running an agency is you hope that you're enjoying what you do. Absolutely.
I think that, there's this obsession with working these 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And it's not really healthy for you mentally and physically, but then also, what are you doing to your relationships with other people if all you do is work, all you do is talk about work, all you do is think about work? I'm all about for being productive and working hard and getting things done, but what are you working for?
Exactly. So, yeah. So here's our advice today is after you listen to our podcast and subscribe, then you should probably shut down and go and watch some TV or go see a movie or go bowling or something with friends or your loved ones or whoever. Or even yourself, go take some time, take a hot bubbly bath and read a book that you've been wanting to, something like that.
Nice.
So yeah. So we're giving everyone permission to just shut down after you listen to Agency inTELL.
Absolutely. As Liz Lemon says from 30 Rock, shut it down.
Shut it down.